L lost the battle but won the war. In this video, I shall be going over all the L's Light has caught because L had intellectually defeated Kira/Light in many ways, but the plot had to quite literally kill him off in the series just so that Light could have his dub. And also like plot reasons, but I'll get into that later. But in doing so, they quite literally killed off any fun in watching the show, that is the plot unfolding. I shall be going over the many victories that the show did not give L enough credit or attention for. I shall also be talking about how L quite literally carried this series on his back and is the best contrast to Light as an intellectual beast, character, plot, and everything. I won't be getting into any of the morals about killing or anything like that. I'll only care for the story, and the story only needs to go as far as it needs to deliver the point and main themes to sell its main points and all that. My point being, I'm only here to call out the bullshit in the series tried to pull and nearly got away with it. Disclaimer, I know this was written back in like 2013, which is still great on its own by the way. It isn't meant to be taken seriously like the authors implied for it, and it's impressive by those standards. But we have stories in our day and age that still hold up to the test of time. Death Note to me could have been one of those series. To some people they are, but to me, so close. They fumbled it like they dropped L. But first, who is L? Some of you might need a refresher on all that. He's the world's best detective, alright? He's the world's best detective, second best detective, and the world's third best detective in the world. You wanna know why he does this? He just does this to fuck with everybody who's trying to capture him. Second, Bay. I mean, look at how simple of a life he lives. He has everything a man could want. Money, a butler, no societal pressure for him to do better with his life. Also, let's talk about his getup. White shirt, long pants, no need to comb his hair. He doesn't flaunt his money at all. I mean, well, he kinda does, but we're not gonna talk about that. I mean, he's the only man to crack the Kira case when the world needed him the most. He did it square on its head, like cracked it like an egg. He turned years of progress into a few weeks and solved it at best. He's the only one to legitimately crack every case that he has solved, kind of like the modern Sherlock Holmes. Never been bested before intellectually, and if no one could solve the Kira case, only he can. It was a guarantee. How does he do this? Well, he made Kira look like a little bitch in front of all his friends. Remember that TV incident? Yeah, that was one of the ways he made Light look like a little bitch. And he won, like L won. And the FBI, the Japanese police, everybody had to trust him and respect him just for messing around with Kira. He also ended up exposing many of the earlier encounters of Kira and killing, like, to test the book, and I have no fucking clue how he figured that out and why they didn't use the camera footage for that to figure out Light could have been potentially one of those suspects. And like, fuck that. L serve in the plot of Death Note. In the beginning, he is very active and drives the plot forward by making millions of breakthroughs in the Kira case. Figuring out the mechanics of the Death Note as they are being exposed to him slowly as the series progresses. Cause like, Light is experimenting with the Death Note and L is catching every one of these experiments by storm. As a character, however, L is meant to serve as the complete opposite to Light. Light's opposite, quite hilariously, would be very dark, but in this case, there is very little to know about L. Like, we are quite literally left in the dark about L. Hell, most of the fans in the series don't even know what L's real name is. Like, just, what the fuck? And we don't even properly know his background, like how he grew up, who his friends were, like fuck all of that shit. It even gets down right to the nitty gritty, like presentation, communication, lifestyle, appearance, almost everything pretty much in terms of like character contrast. Hell, he's the only character in the whole series who's cracking jokes and they genuinely make people laugh. And I'm talking about L, bro. Realistically, go back, watch the series again, see who else makes fun or cracks jokes in the series. Misa is a character that is meant to be a joke and uplifting character and like an emotional element to all of this intellectual heat, but also a blind cult follower, a cause. Beware of Misa. Genuinely, L is learning to be more social and understanding of people's situations and boundaries and respects them a whole lot more, or rather than just him doing whatever the fuck he wanted in the past before, and the people respect him a lot, and he has to do all these other things, precautions, just to keep his job. Light, on the other hand, violating every social boundary possible, like breaking into his father's computer for like details about the case, intentionally violating Misa, you know what I'm talking about, intentionally blackmailing Rem into killing L and Watery for his own personal gain. Hell, I'm gonna talk about later about how the FBI wife was literally gaslit into thinking he was L or working on the case. I forget what to do. I wouldn't be surprised if Light got rid of Misa if she didn't have the eyes right after Rem died. Genuinely. But L did what Light could never do and leave behind an endgame. And L did what Light could never do. He left behind a legacy and won the endgame, bitches. I'm not even gonna speak about that legacy. We're just gonna move on to the next point. What made everyone like L? One, he's socially awkward. I mean, he took every criticism of his character at him at face value and freaked out over it, which is just hilarious. In this one episode, they even point out that Light and L are complete polar opposite when it comes to like looks, riches, socialization, right down to their very clothing. It is interesting, but like these small social, point outs by the task force, fucking he takes it to heart and is just so innocent, bro. He is super friendly, like L is super friendly to everyone, never intentionally making anyone his like true enemy. I'll give you an example. He's extremely friendly to everyone in the task force, including Light, despite being Kira and he knowing that. I mean, yeah, they talked about this detail. He could very easily could have manipulated the task force to get them to sacrifice themselves for the case, like L could have. But he respected everyone's lives, chose not to throw people in the face of danger when he could have very easily justified it, and I would argue he put himself more at risk or at line of fire than any of the members of the task force, simply by making himself a bigger target. Also, we're gonna ignore the fact that he bullies Matsuda for like no reason. Like, my man's Matsuda ain't catching no break from L. He's being used as resource man. Like, L needs like $1 billion bank account, he's transferring it through Matsuda and letting Matsuda take all the heat for it. He needs a cell phone, he's taking Matsuda's. He needs some coffee, he's using Matsuda. Forget Watari, he's using Matsuda. It's just poor Matsuda, man. Oh my god. I just feel bad for Matsuda. And I feel even bad for L for resorting to Matsuda, because he knows he's overworking Watari. He's like what every nerd wishes to be like. Just use the poor or the innocent and just get away with it. Also, we're not going to talk about the fact that he freaking tricked Light and made things interesting by bringing him into the very instigation himself. Just imagine, you're bringing the person you're investigating into the investigation team just to prove he is the killer. Like, oh my gosh. So basically having the killer solve his own case for you. Just try and not to get killed in the process. Just, oh my god. Just, L is just being a complete badass in this situation. I mean, they try to make it like an intellectual smart ass thing to do, but L had no reason for doing this. He could have very easily solved the case without like the need for any of this, but that's just funny. It was easy and fun for the audience to take L's perspective into a logically figuring out who Kira is. Actually, it was very fun to put ourselves into L's perspectives, because we were seeing things from Light's perspective most of the time, and how he was being Kira and all that. But L needed to figure things out logically and figure out who Kira was. We knew who he was, but L was slowly using reasoning to figure out who he was, and that was really fun. I mean, we all know his next move, like L's next move, had to be something big and drastic, and in fact, in most instances, it was shocking. It was like super dramatic. Like, he did not need to be this exact big. Fucking Nier in the Light novels criticized L for doing this, but that's what made L so lovable. Like, every revelation, next scene was shocking and on the point, like super deductive skills, and then it was taken to the max. So with every new detailed, of the Death Note being exposed, L immediately deducted what it was and how it was used to the max effect, or how it was being used by the current supernatural power. And in fact, new pieces of evidence and details had to be thrown or Light had to use in order for L to deduce and eventually cave into solving the case. Amazing, bro. Just simply amazing. Also, when Light and Misa lost their memories and acted super believable in ways that made them look innocent, I feel for L, because he was the lead and he made every correct decision he could, and yet he was forced to admit he was wrong. What did this man do? He had this clear cut. He was forcing confession, because like that's what you gotta do. I mean, that's kind of fucked up on L's part, but like you gotta understand this man's perspective. Like, he's been chasing Light this whole time. He's been chasing Kira this whole time, who happens to be Light. And everything that's been happening to this point only makes sense for it to be Light. And he gets super depressed that nothing goes his way. So I kind of get that. Lastly, we're just gonna talk about how it's not hard to hate Alfred. I mean, Watari. The dad figures in this show are very interesting concepts. Like Light's dad is so clueless as to what Light is even up to, and he's just in utter shock, just figuring out that Light reads a sexy magazine. In a way, Light's dad didn't care much about his own son's upbringing, so long as he was bringing the grades in. But he did like genuinely care about him, but like if he wasn't bringing the grades in, he was not like keeping an eye out for Light, and that's kind of scary. Well, Watari, he was not super emotional dad that we see him to be, but L has this moment with Watari to talk and like genuinely trust. Cause like when L was unsure and scared, Watari was there for him, man. Like, it feels good, man. It feels good. Also, I love Matsuda as just being treated like the little brother of the group, but yet has to do a lot of the heavy lifting for like emotional support and tension breaking, and sometimes even comedy relief. I'm happy Matsuda got like a good payoff at the end, but if like that's a good way to make a situation serious. If the comic relief starts getting serious, this situation will get a whole lot more serious, because when we cut to this character, we're expecting a joke, but if he gets serious, the emotion just doubles. So props for that. Also, why are we not talking about this one episode where like L is just being a massive fucking troll? Okay, like when he's legitimately backed into a corner, like Light has like a plan. He's gonna use Rem to kill L, alright? L has no idea of this. L even knows this. I think L was even setting up his own trap to trap like what? Light into a situation, or like Misa into a situation. With nothing to wager, this motherfucker L goes on a trolling spree, cause like this makes no logical sense. First, he shows up on campus unannounced to meet Light on campus. And before that, he tells the police to gang up on Light and suspect him as Kira, cause why the fuck not? He can just do that, he's L. Like, there was no reason or motive just for him to do this. He just did it, just to fuck with Light. He throws shade at his girls, cause like he can. He steals Misa's phone right away, like from the call, and just has no idea who's on the other side of it. I need you to understand, okay? He steals Misa's phone. He does this in like front of a crowd. He somehow gets away with it. He picks up a call from Misa's phone with no idea who's on the other side of it, and it's just like, yep, hello, what's up, bitch? What the fuck is he doing, bro? Of course, Light, who's calling it, and Light is just super pissed about it. Right after him. Fucking god. And then right after that, Misa just gets captured and Light has to become L's little bitch. Light, putting up an emotional, like what, trap and all that, was forced to put himself under, like what, surveillance in order to create his own freedom, which I just find hilarious. He had to become L's little bitch if he wanted to escape. Knowing this, I legitimately don't know if this was like super elaborate plan or if L was just straight up trolling. I think him trolling was just hilarious because he had the evidence to trap Misa. Like a scene before, we saw him holding evidence of like hair and like fingerprints of like what, the tapes being sent to what, the news channel. And it's just so funny because like I think L legitimately thought he had like what, Light or Misa in like a deadlock or a trap, and so did Light, but we didn't know about it. And so L did not need to go out of his way just to fuck with both of them before he puts them both under constant surveillance. I'm not even kidding. Go watch episode 15 specifically. L's got nothing on Light. He has a guaranteed death sentence, and he just does all of this just to fuck with Light. It's just, oh my god, he's the perfect comic relief. So when like Light and Misa get cleared for innocence from like this elaborate plot, the business group becomes the new point of focus because they're like the new hero and all that. And like I was thinking to myself, like, what was the point of like the business group? I think it was just fanfare. Like this was a distraction for Light to take any suspicion off him for being Kira. Like that's the plot reason. But this is more or less fan service for everyone who wanted to see what it would be like if L and Light worked together without the whole Kira thing being on Light, which is a good thing. Like, yeah, I mean, it gives very good dynamics. And instead of like making this like a legitimate fan service, they made it look like it's L's intention, not L's intention, Light's intention, which made everything super more exponentially fun. And the only reason this worked out to be good in the show is because that this wouldn't be as entertaining if this wasn't Light's way of doing things. And two, Elle and the gang discovered what the Death Note is, and Light just kills off or cuts off any loose ends surrounding his suspicion about the book. This wouldn't work if this one wasn't Light's main goal to get the Death Note intentionally revealed, and just to kill off any suspicion that it could be him, because he knew immediately if the Death Note got exposed, it would definitely link him Light back to as Kira, especially with the way he's been using it and everything. Which brings up a very interesting question. If Light wasn't Kira, would Elle and Light still be friends? That's a yes, but because Light is Kira, it's no. Don't get upset on me in the comment section. Basically, Light's story and Elle is just frankly, Elle is just too good at his game, and so we had to get rid of him. For plot reasons! I mean, that's what the authors say anyways, but in all honesty, this was never the case. At least not when Light voluntarily wiped his own memories. After recovering his memories, Light just seemed to use the name of his past friendship to stay close to Elle despite not being chained up for Elle's sexual satisfaction, like just to watch every action before his eventual death. Like, Light could have opted to like leave and go because like the task force requested that the handcuffs be taken off. Light intentionally stuck close to Elle just to watch his every movement, and whatever they had going on like before was theater. Basically, Elle and both Light on the surface seemed like friends, but they were actually out against each other. And if that fooled anyone, then props to the authors, because they pulled it off. I find it's kind of sad but hilarious that Elle found a friend in Light. Like, Light appreciated Elle enough to be a worthy important, but not as a friend. Just getting rid of Elle was just a first priority because of how much of a threat Elle posed in terms of intellect. As for Elle, I think the friend thing kind of feels forced, but it's also kind of understandable. I mean, I like Elle, so I'll support whatever Elle wants to do. Fuck, I'm becoming a Misa for Elle. Okay, Light did not need to catch Elle before he fell. I think Elle basically had a moment with Light, like in the rain and all that, just to like show there is some humanity left in Kira, but that smirk in the end just says everything that I need to. Elle on the other hand was just, he died peacefully. Elle died peacefully. Light died like a little bitch. That's all I'll say. Light was intentionally designed to be hated. I don't know why people like it. As a character, as a plot driving force, amazing. As a character, not much to go off on besides his intellect. Like, I'm genuinely being serious about this. Okay, now let's talk about any missed opportunities that were covered up in the plot. Okay, there was a moment, like there have been moments in the show where like there has been suspicion on Light, but whenever he figures that out, like Light figures that out, he changes tactics almost immediately. This makes the story far more engaging, which is true, but he always lets the ego get the better of him, like of him being a god, in the way like the TV, like any suspicion that is put on him, he will try and shake it off for a bit. This is a good like character flaw to put in, but for plot reasons, why didn't Elle pick up on this? Why didn't anybody pick up on this? Like, quite literally, Elle mentioned it from the very start. He's pretending to be a god. He isn't. How can we use that against him? Couldn't the authors have done something like this just to like fuck with Light? I don't know. They could have gone more away with that. Also, second point. Why the fuck does the person related to the FBI not be able to contact the police department to give them a tip? This is specifically when the FBI wife goes to the police department to speak with Elle so that he can give off like some sort of like tip so that Elle or like Light would be captured almost immediately. Why did this not happen? This was intentional, like poor writing. This was so bad that the police officer going there right down to check up on things clearly missed the view of like plot reasons of the FBI agent's wife just being killed off in front of him. And don't use the excuse that we were low on personnel. This was not supposed to be an issue to begin with. You're telling me that Elle the smartest detective in the world, didn't plan for this. Yeah, the authors fumbled this up. This one isn't as bad as the last one, but it's clear as fact that Light had to manipulate Rem into killing Ellen Wattery. Okay, if if Light took some of the suspicion like on him and they just never used the death note again, and if they had gotten a secret criminal to die after the 13 days, the Kira case would have been solved. Light would have gone some time in jail, Misa would have gone some time in jail. They would have been free to continue killing. And all they would need to do is just split the book and then just continue the killing spree en masse on end. But no, Light forced Misa to continue killing as like a second Kira or some shit like that, so that Light could legitimately get rid of Ellen Watari for personal reasons. Also, why did no one question the fact that Elle and Watari were the only two killed in the investigation and nobody else was touched or affected by this? And why did the most suspicious person become the lead for the investigation? Obviously, he's not gonna do a very good job. Also, last but not least, I know Ryu kind of dropped the ball, but why did Light feel the need to go after the FBI agent for no reason? Had he left things to be his natural way, pretty sure the FBI would have left him because there was no home invasion. But I think he was pretty worried or scared that he could have found the death note. I mean, he went through this elaborate plot to protect the death note, but just genuinely felt the need to kill off this FBI agent. They had their doubts about following a 16-year-old child. The FBI in the manga had their doubts of following a 16-year-old child in Japan. Pretty much sealed the deal with him being the primary suspect by taking out 2 FBI agents, both the husband and the wife. The female counts because she was one of the best ones there, despite not officially practicing. Okay, point number 4. I understand why Light went into custody, surrendering himself to incarceration. However, the fuck was his reasoning for it? I could be Kira at night. You're not fooling anyone. Side note, I don't know if this is hindsight bias or if it's my liking for Elle, but I'm surprised everyone in the room didn't react to this as a confession. Why didn't nobody believe this? I think it's genuinely because Light's dad was there to cover him up as the emotional support. I think that's the whole reason why. The moment his dad was gone, immediately people started suspecting Light as Kira. It's because of the dad, people were hesitant about doing this. Also, I would commend Light for not trying to go for any of the shit with the team while trying to convince them Kira is a good guy here, or even to suggest Kira is among them, but that's as far as I go. I just want to elaborate more on Light's decision making. He got too greedy and often too impatient. Any challenge to his ideology was enough to shake him up. I'm sure there have been many shows that did this, but I'm sure Al knew this, didn't intentionally provoke in front of others, in front of the task force in this manner, and this is just a major plot hole to me. Al knew Light was Kira, he didn't do this, and I kept thinking, why would L never do this? I think it's just because his dad was there, and L is just too much of a sweetheart to ever do this. Or at least his crush. Or at least he won't do this to his crush. Also, the biggest culprit of all this is Light's dad. Okay, this is less of a plot hole, but this is more as a band-aid over the other plot hole. No, this is actually a good filling for the rest of the plot holes, for Light to get away with a lot of the shit, and for the police force not to do their job properly. But Light's dad, literally, his quiet defense and commitment to his kid is quite literally why Light didn't go to jail sooner. I genuinely appreciate the authors for doing this, but I hate the fact that quite literally, immediately after the father is gone, suspicions about Light grew exponentially. It happened almost immediately. Why didn't we show some hesitation or not resolve, but some believance that Light could be Kira? So yeah, just a couple of stray closing thoughts. Despite the show being more of a cat and mouse game of logic and reason, in the end, emotions and motivations ended up being the downfall for everyone except Nier, who was more machine than anyone else. Fuck that AI little child. Nier and Mello's friendship and competitiveness was nice to look at, and as if to say this is what Elle and Light would have been like if they grew up working together. We already saw something like this before with the group chasing the Yotsuba, but I think it's just nice, refreshing just watching that again, trying to catch a bigger foe, which is Kira. Also, L tried to work with the police task force, but they never saw eye to eye with each other, despite being best buds on the case. Sometimes the task force letting their own thoughts and feelings influence their decision making, affecting L's methods and forcing him to cut things short and not do things correctly. L quite literally adjusted his ways, listened to the opinions of others, and support, while Light was just fucking manipulating everybody to get what he wanted. Like, Light wipes out a whole team for his own selfish gain, while L and Nier didn't do the same. I can't say the same about Mello, but at least he cared, or at least he showed some remorse. Also, how the fuck did I forget about the pure manipulation for Misa Misa by Light Yagami? This poor girl fell for him head over heels, and Light was just, he knew this. Like, he knew that Misa Misa was infatuated by him, and he just continued to use and abuse Misa Misa. It was just so sad to see. Lastly, I love the fact that Ryuk doesn't take any sides and is just a simple enjoyer of the whole thing. He's just there, just enjoying the whole shit. Rem is more of a contrast to Ryuk, who protects Misa Misa, but that didn't hold up for long. My point is that the series had to be over in the first season, but L had to be removed from the picture to show the legitimate and terrifying consequences that Kira had been having on the people of the world. 70% drop in global crimes is a utopia level of worship and is deserving of praise for the hard work he's committed. That's the whole reason L had to go. I still think it was a good way to end the show off by the two, by showing the legacies fighting against each other. Like I don't want to say the reincarnation of L, but basically L's supposed kid versus Kira's best successor. I mean, this wasn't meant to last. How could it? Was there ever anything that was going to be better than Kira than Light? According to the authors, was there going to be a better Kira than Light? There could have been at least 2 attempted successors, but they both failed. The second one I'm referring to is the Old People Killer. That is a Light novel. I believe a few years after Light's death. Bro got humbled so fast, I won't spoil the ending. I kind of did, but it's pathetic. Just solidifying my point. You figure out how he does it. It's sad. I wouldn't call Misa Akira like the others. She didn't kill when she had the book, I believe, earlier than the rest, and only killed to find Kira and to obey him like a true slave in the whole ordeal. Okay, that's probably because of the love talking, but also I won't bother speculating about why Misa got the Shinigami eyes. It's more or less shock value factor. Also, Mello's unpredictability and lack of morals, and Nier's way too cool-headed personality of thinking. The moment those two came together, Light never stood a chance. He couldn't predict Mello's actions, and since Nier knew Mello pretty well, Nier literally won this match. This was made evidently clear when both Mello and Nier were both forced into a corner, their whole teams were wiped out completely. And when they were both desperate for actions, they both had to choose to close their bonds off early on, become allies just to take down Kira. That just shows how strong Light was as an opponent, because he beat Kira, and so that objectively showed that the torch was successfully passed on to the younger generation. How it was done, I'm not gonna fucking talk about that. And surprisingly, this works because Mello was willing to sacrifice his own life, and Nier, to a certain extent, to capture Kira. They were both willing to put their lives on the line, while Light always stood in the background, letting others take the fall for him, never willing to put his own life on the line. Light was throwing people away like cards and a puppets meant to be sacrificed, but the real victim in all of this is L and Misa Misa, because Light was supposed to hook up with L.